Welcome to the Saturday Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Daily. On today's show, we're talking about the updated Defensive Player of the Year odds, the players that are making a pre-leap, and then Lauren Williams joins the show to talk about the Atlanta Hawks. But to start with, Al, tell me about the top stories this week.
Well, Andrew, our top story this week was All-Star Weekend in San Francisco. In the Skills Challenge, one of the teams won. More importantly, that little trickster Chris Paul tried to break the game by not even attempting to make a three-pointer and instead just throwing the balls haphazardly toward the basket. Thankfully, the league stepped in to uphold the sanctity of the Skills Challenge, which again, one of the teams won. In the three-point contest, the big question was whether Damian Lillard would three-peat as champ, but he did not. Instead, it was Tyler Hero in his first All-Star game who won the three-point contest, defeating Darius Garland and Buddy Hield in the final. We would see a three-peat on Saturday, however, as Mac McClung did 4 pretty cool dunks and easily beat the other 3 contestants, winning his 3rd straight dunk contest. As for the actual All-Star game, the big news this year was the NBA's new format. Ditching the typical 48-minute game, the NBA finally listened to all of us Kevin Hart fans who have been clamoring for more Kevin Hart. Hart was on the broadcast team and spent the night cracking my ass up. Thankfully, he did finally get serious for the main event, pretending like Inside the NBA isn't going to be on TV anymore. Ernie and the gang were honored at half court, a beautiful send-off that was sadly cut short by a basketball game that had double-booked the court at the same time. While All-Star Weekend was a big event for the NBA, the actual top story this week was the news that Victor Wembanyama would be shut down for the rest of the season due to a blood clot in his shoulder. The Spurs announced that this is an isolated event. They do not expect any long-term issues, but it's a disappointing end to a great season for Wemby, who put up 24, 11, and 4, while leading the league in blocks, something that he will continue to do despite not playing another game. He has a 74 block lead on the number 2 player, Walker Kessler. Wemby will, however, miss out on a likely Defensive Player of the Year award and a possible All-NBA spot as well. Now, is there a possible Ewing theory with Wemby and the Spurs? Question mark?
Don't do that.
No, not at all. But the Spurs did win their first Wemby-less game post All-Star break against the Phoenix Suns, who have now lost 7 of their last 8. Another player who won't be playing for a while, like Wemby, but for a completely different reason, is Bobby Portis. Portis was suspended 25 games for violating the league's anti-drug policy. In a statement, Portis explained that he took an unapproved pain medication, Tramadol, when he intended to take Toradol, an approved medication. Regardless, Portis will now not be eligible to play for the Bucks until April 8th, with only 3 games remaining in the regular season. Is there a possible Ewing theory with Portis and the Bucks? Question mark? No, it's Bobby Portis. But the Bucks did win their first game post All-Star break, getting an impressive win over the Clippers, 116-110. Now, a player who will be playing but maybe should have taken a bit longer to come back is Luka Doncic. In the first game post All-Star break, Luka shot 5 of 18 from the field with 6 turnovers in a 100-97 loss to the Charlotte Hornets. Luka has yet to top 16 points in his first 3 games with the Lakers and had to sit out on Thursday, the second night of a back-to-back, for management of his previous calf injury. Finally, we only had really one night of games this week, other than that Lakers game. The best win was probably the Indiana Pacers, who outscored the Memphis Grizzlies 50-26 in the second quarter, eventually winning 127-113. How about those Pacers? After starting 10-15, Indiana has gone 21-8 over their last 29 games and have a 1-game lead on the Bucks for the 4 seed in the East. And those were the top stories this week.
Wow. What a week. Al, let's get our BetMGM line of the week in from our partners BetMGM. It's the Defensive Player of the Year award, which was going to go to Victor Wembanyama, but is now, I think, up for grabs. Currently, Jaren Jackson Jr. holds the best odds at a -120. We have Evan Mobley coming in at +120, Dyson Daniels at a +700, and then you got a group of the Thunder guys. Lou Dort leads that pack at +900, Shea's at +3,000, and J-Dub is at +4,000. You have a favorite for this award, Al, now that Wemby's out?
I mean, it would be fun for a guard to win it. You know, Dyson Daniels there at plus 700, Lou Dort at plus 900. I just feel like it's never going to happen again. It happened with Marcus Smart, and now we have to wait another 2 decades for that to ever happen again. So I'm going to go with Evan Mobley. Okay. I think the Grizzlies have the better defense right now, but I could just see by the end of the year, the Cavs, if they're far and away clearly the number 1 seed in the East, there will be a desire to want to give the Cavs some recognition for that. Evan Mobley would be the easiest way to do that as Defensive Player of the Year. I think both of those guys are worthy. So I'll go with Evan Mobley.
Yeah. I just wonder, and this maybe this is homerific of me. I don't know.
Here he comes.
Listen, the Thunder are 7 points per 100 possessions better on defense than the Grizzlies.
Andrew,
and the Cavaliers.
They're not going to do it. They will not do it. I guarantee it.
They're at 7 points. 7, which is unheard of. Like, that is a crazy number. I mean, they're 4 points per 100 possessions better than the second team in defense. Maybe they won't. I don't think it will happen either. I'm not saying this is going to happen. But in my opinion, there has to be some way to honor this Thunder defense, which is like one of the best defenses of the past 30 years. And like one of the best Thunder defense, or one of the best NBA defenses ever. And so like, how do you commemorate that? How do you honor that? Like their numbers line up best with the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. Like, that's the kind of team we're talking about. And they're probably going to get the MVP and Shea, most likely. At least it looks like that. But the defense is one of the reasons why they are this good. And to me, either you honor it with putting 3 of those guys on the all-defense team, which I think is possible, right? I also think that, like, probably Hartenstein should be on there instead of Shea. Like, no shade to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who's been amazing. But I think it should be Isaiah Hartenstein on there. But like, it needs to be at least 3 of those guys on there because I think they're deserving. Or you like give Dort like a real chance to win the DPOY. Like, I think they have it right in that he's the guy that has the best odds for this team. I think he's been their most impactful defender. I think it would have been Chet. I actually think Chet would have probably won this thing if he had been healthy for the whole season, just because I think he'd put up, you talk about like the block numbers, Chet would be right there with Wemby. I don't think he would be like head and shoulders above him, but I think over the next 28 games, if Chet was healthy the whole season, he would surpass Wemby over these next few weeks. But I just think there needs to be some way to like show like, hey, yes, the Thunder's impact on this season of NBA basketball came on the defensive end, and like some way to commemorate it. And maybe that's just me being a homer, and I'll take that on the chin if that's true. But like this, to me, I just think that Lou Dort 1 deserves a little bit better odds than this. And then I just think like when we're talking about just the all defense team, like the Thunder need to be peppered within that.
Well, where this is unfair to the Thunder is that because the team as a whole is so good, because you have Alex Caruso coming off the bench, when people go to look at like on-off numbers, it's never going to be impressive. You know, like if you look at Jaren Jackson Jr., there's 6 points per 100 possessions better defensively when he's on the court. Evan Mobley, it's 5 points. When Lou Dort's on the court, they're actually worse defensively. Like they're worse defensively by 2 points per 100 possessions. So, and the reason for that is because you have so many good defenders coming off the bench. So it's not going to happen. And it's
I hope that we find other ways to look at that award and not just that, because it's such a flawed way to look at it.
Uses. And I
know,
think
but it's an extremely flawed way.
I know it is.
It's so flawed.
You get the benefit for having a crappy bench. That I feel like that has pervaded like all NBA awards now, where like if you want to win an award, you just have to cobble together the crappiest bench you can, so that you can have the craziest on-off numbers.
Absolutely. I think it's why a lot of Jokic's numbers just look outrageous. It's like, let's go get Šarić to help, propel this award for Jokic. I mean, it is a wild way to look at it, because like you watch these Thunder games. Listen, you watch these Thunder games, Al. I'm just telling you, like the impact that Lou Dort has night in, night out is massive. It's massive on the defensive end.
Hey, Andrew.
All right, I'm done. I'm done.
That's enough.
Sorry.
That's as much as we're going to cry today. Okay, we're done with our little crying session. We're moving on because Andrew, one of my favorite things each season is seeing which young players start to break out after the All-Star break. It's one of my favorite things because you never know if what you're seeing is real or not. Maybe they're just getting extra minutes they'll never see again. Maybe it's just March when nothing in the NBA matters. But sometimes it does. An example of a post-All-Star bounce being real happened in the spring of 2023 when Kobe White suddenly was more efficient. His assists per game more than doubled. He was still only averaging under 12 points per game, but he looked like a completely different player. The next season, he came in averaging 19 points per game. He came second most improved player. So now that it's post-All-Star break, we're going to try and predict which players will see a post-All-Star bounce. Now, they could be playing well so far. I tried to pick some players later on that are not playing great right now in the hopes that, well, it can only get better. So we'll see.
It's a risky way to look at it.
It is a risky way. We've each picked 3 players that we think are going to raise their game over these next 2 months. And my first pick is the one I feel most confident about and one that seems obvious to me. And it's Ausar Thompson from the Detroit Pistons. Now, Ausar had a slow start to the season. He had that blood clot issue, which kept him out until Thanksgiving. Then over the next month or so, he really wasn't getting the minutes I was expecting. He was averaging around like 18 minutes per game in his first 17 games. Well, the minutes have started to pick up. He's around 24 per game in his last 16. But more importantly, it feels like he's finally getting in a groove. He's a player not exactly known for his offense. He has scored double-digit points in his last 7 games, including 19 in the last game before the All-Star break. But the thing that excites me is the increased playmaking. He's averaged 4.5 assists over that stretch and has had some really pretty passes. He had one in that most recent game against the Bulls where he scored 19, where he cuts to the basket from the corner, got a pass from Jalen Duren, and immediately passed it to Tobias Harris, who was on the wing behind him for a 3. He's a menace in transition and around the rim. He's shooting 72% at the rim per clean glass. And he's confident. He did an interview over All-Star Weekend with Brian Kalbrowski. He said that he was the best perimeter defender in the league. I like that. Because of the slow start, I think it's easy to forget how good he looked early on in his rookie season. And I think if he starts getting 30-ish minutes per night down the stretch, we're going to be feeling completely different about Ausar headed into this summer. So that's pick number 1 for me. What about you, Andrew? What is your first pick?
Yeah, I like that pick. I'm going with Trey Murphy, who is also probably pretty obvious and is getting a lot of run and getting the basketball a lot in New Orleans. And some of that is they're in this kind of situation where like somebody's got to score the points, somebody's got to do it. But as he keeps getting more of the basketball, things just keep getting better. He actually might be the best player to ever play for the University of Rice, by the way, as I was like looking up things about Trey Murphy, is like the best guy outside of Trey Murphy that played for Rice, maybe Morris Almond, Almond and Rice. Yeah, he's been great. I mean, he has really picked it up, and you kind of thought, okay, they're trading Brandon Ingram. What's next for this team? Well, honestly, like he just like slots in. He's just a much better fit for almost anybody than Brandon Ingram is because of the amount of threes that he takes. But to me, it is the playmaking. In the month of February, it's only been 6 games, but he's averaging 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists a game, which is something that I probably never thought Trey Murphy could do. He was kind of billed as like this 3-and-D forward, coming into the draft. I was really I've been just blown away by what he's been able to do. He shoots it well from just about everywhere. Like during that 6-game stretch, he also shot 41% from 3. He's a good defender. He's a do-it-all forward. And I just think that the fact that he can be a playmaker and he's pretty low turnover as well, I think really bodes well for them. And like, we just have to remember, like they're a team that when you go to Tankathon and you take a few spins, like they could end up with the number 1 pick in this draft.
Yeah.
And if you're building a team with Cooper Flagg and Trey Murphy, like that's a great way to start a team, honestly. Like I don't know what they're going to do with Zion Williamson or what ends up happening there, but if you can get a Dylan Harper or a Cooper Flagg or even VJ Edgecombe, who I think has tremendous upside, like you're on your way. And I think a lot of it is just hitting on Trey Murphy in the middle of the draft like they did a few years ago, I think is huge. And just the fact that he, as you continue to give him more, that he can take it on and his usage goes up and his production goes up. I just think it's really impressive. So shout out Trey Murphy.
All right, Andrew, my second pick, this might be more wish casting than it's actually going to happen. It's Shaedon Sharpe from the Portland Trailblazers.
Okay.
I really like Shaedon. I watched a miserable Blazers-Clippers game in person to get a commemorative glass with Shaedon Sharpe on it. On the season, he's up over 17 points per game, which is great. He still produces some great highlights, but it's been kind of a disappointing season overall. Part of it is that Chauncey Billups benched Sharpe in mid-January because his defense, he said it was atrocious. And as a result, his minutes haven't been nearly as consistent as they were early in the season. Like that last game on Thursday night against the Lakers, he played 21 minutes. It doesn't always feel like he's been the top priority prospect that I kind of expected him to be coming into the season. His shot also, and his shot hasn't come around. Like there's good reason why this hasn't happened. Even though he looks very good shooting, he's taking a career high 6.1 attempts per game, but his 3-point percentage has declined each season, 36%, 33%, and now 31%. So this is a risk I'm taking, Andrew. For him to have this post All-Star bounce, it's going to take a couple things. One, he has to start hitting his threes. Like, please start hitting threes. It looks good. Got to start hitting them. And two, the Blazers have to start prioritizing their young players more. That 10-1 run was great. Okay. But they've lost 4 in a row now. They're 5.5 games out of the play-in. I think there has to be a shift to prioritizing the young guys at some point. Shaedon Sharpe is extension eligible this summer. You have to make some kind of decision this summer, and I still don't feel like I have a great idea of what they have with him or their other young guys. We've only gotten 148 minutes this season with Klingon, Scoot, and Sharpe on the court together. They're 3 under-22 prospects. I'm betting that at some point, this team will shift their focus and maybe Shaedon Sharpe will be the big beneficiary. But it's a risk, Andrew. I acknowledge. It probably won't happen.
That does feel risky. Mine is going to a player that he's definitely not a focal point. He's not going to be a guy that is going to make like a leap into stardom or even like all-star game or anything like that. But he's a guy that is going to play a really crucial role for a really good team, and it's Aaron Wiggins on the Thunder. Since his birthday, January 2nd, he's averaging 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and has been shooting 55% from the field, 38% from 3 on almost 5 attempts, and 87% from the free throw line. He's been the 3rd leading scorer on the Thunder since January 2nd. And has been just such a huge piece of what they do. In the month of February, he's had just a ridiculous month. If you look at his splits, he's averaged 25 and 2 in the month of February. A lot of that buoyed by a 41-point game that he had. But I think as the Thunder kind of move into becoming contenders and like a team that is just in the playoffs as a mainstay, I think they're going to need like a more consistent go-to scorer off the bench. And that's something they kind of struggled with, especially when Shea's on the bench, they have struggled a lot. And I think that Aaron Wiggins could be a part of that solution. He's only 26 years old. He's a guy that he was the 55th overall pick. He's not somebody that was really supposed to be here kind of thing, but he's really developed into a 3-level scorer. He's a guy that's got a couple really nice spin moves to the bucket and can finish around the hoop. And then he's a guy that has really shot the ball well off the catch. And so he's somebody, if he can catch this kind of consistency, not that he's scoring 20 points per game, that he's scoring 12 points per game, the rest of the season off the bench. I think that he could make a huge impact on this team and on the playoffs as a whole, because the Thunder just needs some more consistent scoring off the bench, and not just from 3, but just like in transition, creating in the half court. He can shoot a mid-range jumper. When he does get to the free throw line, he makes his free throws. Like, he's just a guy that I think the Thunder have started to count on a little bit more over this last stretch. And he's somebody that I think could become like the future 6th man for this team. And, the Thunder have him locked up on what I think is one of the best contracts in the NBA. He's $10 million this year. He's $9 million the following year, 8, 7, and then he's at 7.9 in 28-29. And if he really is like this 6th man for the Thunder, getting him at under $8 million in 28-29 is going to look ridiculous. So just wanted to give a shout out to Aaron Wiggins. And I think that he's somebody who is developing and becoming like a legit NBA scorer. And you can just kind of see it in his confidence level.
So my final pick, less about me believing that this guy has some crazy ceiling. This is more about this guy fell into an incredible opportunity where he, in my opinion, is obviously about to put up career numbers. And that player is 24-year-old Quentin Grimes of the Philadelphia 76ers. He was recently traded to the Sixers from the Mavericks. He's now starting for the Sixers, has started the last 2 games. He's getting 30-plus minutes every night. Eric Gordon is without a timetable to return from his wrist injury, which means we're about to get a whole lot of Quentin Grimes. And let's be honest, Embiid and PG are probably going to miss some games down the stretch, whether Philly is still hopelessly trying to catch the Chicago Bulls or whether they shift to maximizing their odds to keep their pick. Regardless of the scenario, I think Quentin Grimes is going to be a big beneficiary. He's already had a 30-point game in the last game before the All-Star break against Brooklyn. He's taken over 6.5 threes per game in Philly. Now, he hasn't shot it great yet in Philly, but he's consistently been like a 38 to 40% three-point shooter over his career. Depending on how the rest of the season goes for Philly, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Grimes is sniffing 20 points per game the rest of the season. Now, that sounds ridiculous, okay. I know. But coming into last night, he was like at 16.8 through his like first 4 or 5 games with Philly. I just think he has so much opportunity. Now, if Philly's big three stay healthy somehow down the stretch, that's not going to happen. But the longer they refuse to pass the Bulls, the more you wonder if this team does shift their approach at some point, which would give Grimes even more opportunities than he's already getting. I just think this is like the classic guy where at the end of the season, or even like a couple of years from now, we'll be like, do you remember when Quentin Grimes averaged like 18 points per game for the Sixers? He's just like, I don't think he's that type of player, but he has this rare opportunity where his pre to post All-Star splits are going to look crazy.
Yeah, I could see that. He's bounced around the league so much. It's been just kind of strange, honestly.
He's kind of got the Christian Wood thing without like the obvious Christian Wood baggage. Like at least we knew about the Christian Wood thing. Like people were like, he can be kind of annoying to play with or whatever. But we haven't heard necessarily that with Quentin Grimes. But yeah, it is strange that he keeps getting traded.
I don't get it. Like he defends. He
hits his threes.
Like he tries hard. He hits his threes. He's a young player. I mean,
what's going on here?
It wasn't that long ago that he was untouchable in a trade for the Knicks, and like suddenly he's on like 4 different teams. It's bizarre. My last player is a guy who was taken outside the lottery in this past draft. In the 2024 NBA draft, he was selected 15th by the Miami Heat, Khalil Ware, who is just a really interesting player to me and somebody that has gotten more opportunity. He's gotten to start 12 games recently. And you look at his splits between being a reserve and being a starter. As a reserve, he was 7 points, 4 rebounds per game. He's playing fine, like shooting the ball well off the bench. He was shooting 40% from 3 off the bench. He's kind of this interesting like guy that can get blocks and threes, which is really valuable in the league. And they've moved him into the starting lineup, and the production has ticked up. He's almost 11.5 points per game, almost 10 rebounds. He's a guy that gets a steady amount of blocks and shoots threes. And like those guys are really tough to find, and especially as a 7-footer. He's played really well. He's had like breakout games against San Antonio. He had 25, 8 and 2 with 2 blocks. And the next game against Portland, who during that stretch was playing really well, he was 20, 15 and 2 blocks. And he made 2 threes in that game. I mean, he's a very rare type of player. And in the draft process, people kind of questioned his motor and what he could be as an NBA player. And I think that he landed in the exact right spot in Miami, where like the motor clearly has not been a problem for Khalil. And he's a guy that I think that he's only 20, and he's only 20 is the thing. Like he's big. He's got a great NBA body. He's got long arms. He's a guy that can, again, shoot threes and block shots. Like that is a rare player to find. And in a draft let's be clear, this draft class has not shown out. This has not been a great draft class, but he's one of the bright spots. And I think that Miami, while they've lost Jimmy Butler, I think there is like a future, and I'm not saying that Ware is going to be like the centerpiece of their future, but the fact that you can keep stacking good players like this, like they just have a lot of good players. And we're texting about Nikola Jovic, who's also had a really nice few weeks too. Like he's another just good player that they drafted. Like they're eventually going to be back in the hunt in the Eastern Conference. And I think that just drafting a guy like Ware is going to help.
Yeah, I was listening to Ball. They did a redraft of this past draft, and Ware went number 1. And at first I was like, whoa.
He went number 1.
He went number 1. But then you start thinking about it, and it's like, you know what? That's not that crazy. Like when you look at the other guys he's being compared to, and the thing you mentioned about like his kind of unicorn status, like finding a player like that is so difficult. And so the fact that he's already showing this production as a rookie on like not a lottery team, a team that's in the play-in, that really is impressive. And I certainly I could see it. I could see us in 5 years looking back and Khalil Ware is the best player from this draft class. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's totally possible. I don't know that I would take him number 1, but
who would you take number 1, Andrew? Let us know right now.
Who would I take number 1? I'd probably take McCain
today.
Probably McCain.
He went number 2. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. McCain is, when he played, was really, really good. He was good. Or Steph Castle. I know that a lot of people don't believe in the shooting, but like the guy, he defends, he can pass it a little bit. I just like him. He can get to the hoop. I like Stephon Castle, and he's got good size. So that's the thing that I worry a little bit about with McCain. But I just think like the shooting and the confidence is tough to find. Something else that's tough to find is someone to talk about the Hawks, but we did find somebody, and it's our good friend Lauren Williams, who we are going to talk to right after this quick break.
All right, Andrew, it is time for the Wheel of Fandom, the weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. Last week, the wheel landed on the Atlanta Hawks, and because of All-Star Weekend, we didn't get a ton of Hawks basketball this week. The lone game was a 114-108 loss to the Orlando Magic, a game in which Trae Young scored 38 points. The loss dropped the Hawks to 26-30, ninth in the East, half game back of Miami for the 8th seed. And speaking of Miami, the Hawks have 2 big games against the Heat in the coming week, which could be important for tiebreakers. Cleaning the Glass has Atlanta as the 17th ranked offense and 15th ranked defense. Andrew, if our favorite team is the Hawks, who is our guest?
It's our good friend Lauren Williams from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, as always. It's a pleasure.
So the Hawks have played 4 games since their very active trade deadline, where they swapped out DeAndre Hunter and Bogey for Terrence Mann, George Niang, and Karis LeVert. What are your thoughts on the Hawks' deadline deals?
When they initially happened, I know a lot of people were questioning the deal, but the Hawks are a team that didn't have a ton of depth, especially once injuries happened. You look what happened with Jalen Johnson, and how impactful his missing this last month and a half has been for the team. And so adding some savvy veterans like George Niang and Karis LeVert to the rotation really kind of helped to, in some ways, add a little bit more playmaking, because you have a guy like George who can really shoot the ball. You have a guy like Karis LeVert who can go out and get his own bucket. And then you have a guy like Terrence Mann who has been having a bit of a down year, but you're just waiting for him to kind of get that burst that we're used to seeing from him when he was on the Clippers. And so I think in adding those 3 guys, they kind of stretched their rotation a little bit more and added some much needed depth. So they're not relying on, and as much as I like Garrison Matthews, they're not relying on a guy who has been very inconsistent with his 3-point shots as of late. So I didn't hate the deal. This team was very young, and so adding guys who are over the age of 27 is always going to push a team toward being more of a contender than the Hawks were before.
Yeah, and watching the few games after the trade deadline, it still looks like they're prioritizing their young guys. Risacher is still in the starting lineup. Dyson Daniels is still getting 30 plus minutes a game. So it's not like they're playing all these old guys
Exactly.
in favor of young guys. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, those guys are coming off of the bench. And so, it's a key part of those two players that you mentioned in Dyson Daniels and Zachary Risacher's development. So it's not hindering it, but it's just adding a little bit more experience for what the Hawks lacked in, some of those clutch minutes that they were relying heavily on Trae. And even though, Thursday night's game against the Magic ended with the Hawks in the loss column, you still saw some good things that, they maybe would have struggled with at the beginning of the season in just, execution and the small things defensively, just because guys like Karis LeVert and George Niang and Terrence Mann are all known for having a little bit more of that defensive punch that the Hawks lacked.
So speaking of Dyson Daniels, he's had a breakout season since being traded to Atlanta in the DeJounte Murray trade. He's kind of made his name as a defensive specialist, leading the league in steals and deflections. But I'm interested in what you think about his offensive development this season. Obviously not known for that side of the ball, but where have you seen him make the biggest strides this season on that end?
Yeah, I think the biggest strides that Daniels has made is just really showing off that he can go out and create, not just for others, but he can kind of create a little bit more for himself. I don't think Thursday's game against the Magic was indicative of how good of a stretch he had before the All-Star break, just because none of the Hawks seem to be able to make a layup on Thursday night, but he's a guy that can attack the basket. He's playing through contact and getting kind of the benefit of the whistle. And those small things are what has helped the Hawks a lot as of late when Trae goes to the bench and them not having Jalen Johnson. So I think the fact that Dyson is gaining more confidence in going to the basket and in making plays for others is a huge step forward. Obviously, the big thing that he needs to make a jump on is knocking shots from three down a little bit more consistently. But he's been doing what the Hawks have needed him to do. And if he's going to be a guy that's going to work from the inside out, then the fact that he's hitting that floater a little bit more consistently is maybe a good sign that three-point shot might fall a little bit more consistently later.
Yeah, I want to emphasize how much better Dyson Daniels has been than everybody else this season with just like his deflection numbers. He has 311 deflections this season. Number
That's
two,
insane.
Kelly Oubre, which kind of surprising, 213. He has like 100 more than the second place guy. I mean, he is so far and away like the most disruptive guy. I mean, he took the Hawks from being like, they're just like a middle of the pack defense. They're nothing special, but he took them to being like one of the most disruptive defenses in the NBA by himself. Like that's all that it took. The Thunder are the most disruptive defense in the NBA, but like next is the Hawks, and it's only because of this guy. And so it's just kind of amazing that he was kind of being hidden in New Orleans a little bit.
Well, you think about it. They had Herb Jones. They had Trae Murphy. They had a few really defensive long wings that were hitting shots offensively and really kind of gave New Orleans the leeway or the green light for them to be on the floor a little bit more than Dyson. So the fact that he's able to kind of flourish in this offense with Quinn Snyder that really kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, prioritizes the pass, really prioritizes attacking the basket or kicking out to guys outside. I think that's kind of what has helped him kind of flourish a little bit more. And maybe that's what has given a team like Australia to say, hey, Quinn, maybe we should bring you aboard to coach our national team. Though nobody is going to comment on that. I have no idea what's happening with that. But I mean, if you can't hide or you can't lie about the trajectory or the making that assumption, that might be why he got the call. But who knows?
Yeah, no kidding. So Zachary Risacher was the number one pick in last year's draft and has averaged around 24 minutes per game this season. While the efficiency hasn't been there, Risacher has been productive for a rookie. Based on what you've seen so far, how much upside do you think Risacher has, and what does he need to do to reach that upside?
Yeah, I think Zach's upside has just been, I don't know, I think his instincts and the fact that he has not shown any fear in continuing to try to get to the rim is a good sign. You think about him, he's only 19 years old. when he came in, he was pretty skinny, pretty small, and he's trying to attack these 7-footers who are probably have like 50 to 60 pounds on him. I mean, the fact that he doesn't have that fear is a really good sign, in my opinion. And the type of buckets that he's trying to get, I think also kind of lends itself to him being the guy that has a high basketball IQ that the Hawks kind of need. And so I'm very impressed with just that poise that he's shown as a 19-year-old. And the thing is, he's really, you can see kind of that progress over the course of the season that, as you mentioned, the efficiency wasn't really there at the beginning of the year, but as of late, it's kind of started to pick up a little bit. You think about that 30-point game he had against Cleveland. You think about a couple of performances that he had against New York. And so I think he has a lot of upside. I think the big thing for him to really reach his potential, and I know the Hawks are really big about not putting ceilings on guys, but for him to truly reach his potential, I think it's just continuing to add some strength to him. He's still only 19. And I think just maybe being a little bit more vocal with trying to, you never want a guy to bait for fouls, but just being a little bit more vocal in terms of the type of contact he's playing through, because there's so many times you see him kind of get jostled around when he's attacking the basket and he's not getting the benefit of the whistle like some other players are. You can call it the rookie whistle, the lack of rookie whistle, I don't know, but he's only averaging about 2.2 free throws per game through 50 games, and that seems very crazy. That seems very crazy considering how much he's been trying to get to the rim.
Lauren is at the Hawks practice facility currently, and is like has kind of like snuck away to do this pod for us, and so we're very grateful. And if there's interruptions, it's because she's just a true slam and jammer helping us out today.
Shout out Billy Hartman from Hawks PR.
There you go.
Who was that? Hey.
So Lauren, it seems like there's always whispers about Trae Young's future in Atlanta. You know, Chris Haynes talked about how Trae Young's future was becoming murky. Bobby Marks wrote about his uncertain future because of possible extension talks. How committed do you think this franchise is to Trae, and would a trade this summer surprise you?
This team has been very hard to nail down as far as getting somebody to go on the record about who the core is. And so they are very, at least on the record, very focused about, it being a team effort. But you can kind of look to the types of players that they've acquired and drafted over the last few years, and they've really prioritized that sort of long athletic wing. And so if Trae were to go on the trade block this summer, I don't think it would completely surprise me. But I think the big thing is that he seems to have really bought into what Quinn Snyder is trying to do with the team. And if you look at how he played last season compared to how he's playing this season, how unselfish he's been. I mean, he currently leads the league in assists per game. And just the fact that he's not taking some of those weird long threes that we're used to seeing him do. They've happened on occasion. You think of the game winner against the Jazz. You think of Thursday night, he had a logo three. And so the fact that he's kind of trying to evolve as a player lends itself to what the Hawks' mission is in this current front office. So if anything, I could see him opting out of that player option that he has in that final year. But as if anything, just what I'm observing, it seems like he's locked into what they're trying to do. And I think I would give it probably one more year before I really say the future is murky, but I don't know. I don't want to put words into people's mouth. This is all just complete and utter speculation, but just based on what I've seen and observed and listened to what Trae has said when he speaks to us.
Looking ahead to the summer, let's just assume that Trae Young is a Hawk. What do we think are the biggest weaknesses on the roster, and like how are they going to address those?
Yeah, I think the biggest weakness is they really should be adding some more depth at the 5. You think about the injuries that have happened. Clint was down for 9 games with back spasms. Larry Nance is out for potentially the rest of the season, even the postseason, with that knee injury that he suffered against Orlando a couple games ago. And Onyeka has been playing out of his mind, but they really do need a solid backup big if they're really leaning into Onyeka Okongwu as the starting center. They just don't. It's just offensively, the production at the 5 off the bench has not been great. And that's just not Clint's strong suit. He's great defensively. They've missed what he's been able to do defensively, but offensively, they really need that extra punch in the paint, especially when those shots haven't been falling from outside. They need somebody that they can go to, maybe, lean on Trae's strength as a pick and roll facilitator a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's the biggest weakness that they currently have, is that they don't have a backup big for the future if we're really leaning into Onyeka as that starting 5.
Yeah. I just had one more just about their draft pick. They don't have the draft pick. They traded it. It's looking like the Spurs are going to have 2 really nice picks, one of their own without Wemby down the stretch, and then this Hawks pick. I assume the Hawks are just going to keep fighting and try to stay in the play-in hunt, just hoping a prayer that they somehow make the playoffs. Is that just kind of where we're headed with all of this?
Well, I mean, they still are waiting to see if that Sacramento pick conveys. I mean, that's still TBD. It's protected 1 through 12, I believe.
Okay.
And then they have a pick from the Lakers that they got in that DeJounte Murray, Dyson Daniels deal.
Yeah.
And so,
it's the 23rd-ish pick.
Exactly. So it's not, but at least this draft is not the same as last year's. There's just a lot more depth as far as, the talent that's in this draft. So it's not a perfect situation to be in, but they're not totally out of it next year as far as draft picks go. And they did get quite a few draft picks back in that trade for DeAndre Hunter. They got a couple 2nd-round picks. So
yeah,
it's not totally
that Kings one. That Kings one is really big. That Kings pick is really
huge.
Big. They need the Kings to play some really bad basketball down the stretch, because if that.
Well,
or I guess good basketball. I'm sorry.
Good,
no, I'm wrong.
They need them to play good basketball.
Sorry. No, they need this DeMar DeRozan led team to be good. Yeah, top 12 protected, because right now it's the 13th pick, and it's more. It's likely if it stayed there, it's likely the Hawks would get it. But just you're dancing on the edge there.
Yeah,
for Atlanta. That's interesting.
It is, but that's just their luck. They get the first overall pick in a draft that nobody's really sniffing around too closely, and then they're kind of in murky waters the rest of the way.
Totally.
Thank you for answering all of our Hawks questions today. Is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, Hawks edition, featuring Lauren Williams from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now, Lauren, you've played this before. I've come up with 8 questions about the Hawks. I believe you won last time, if I remember correctly. Some are easy, some are hard. You're going to give me a number between 1 and 8. It will correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and we'll go back and forth until all the questions have been asked and answered. So to start us off, Lauren, I just need a number between 1 and 8.
Okay, 6.
Question number 6. Okay. How many players on the Hawks' current roster have had a 30-point game? And as a hint, before the trade deadline, the answer would have been 7. Okay, so that's a little bit of a hint. It may actually make it more difficult to figure out. You have to do some additional math. But before the deadline, it would have been 7. What is it now? The number of players on the roster who've had a 30-point game.
And this is after the trade deadline, the current roster.
Current roster.
Okay. Zach. I think Dyson. Jalen. Definitely. Trae, definitely. Are we counting the new guys as well? Or
We are counting the new guys. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go just taking a shot in the dark here now. I'm going to go with 5.
That is incorrect. Andrew, you have a chance to steal for 1.
Okay.
What would you guess, Andrew?
7.
So it was 7 before the deadline. They traded away DeAndre Hunter and Bogey, who both had 30-point games. They brought in 3 new players, all of who have had a 30-point game, even George Niang.
This
So the
season?
correct answer
Niang
is
has.
8. Correct answer is
This
8.
season?
Not this season, just
Just in general. Okay, so I misunderstood the
Yang.
question.
Oh, sorry.
I was thinking just the season.
And the other ones were Trae, Jalen,
Sad.
Okongwu, Capella, and Risacher. Capella had a 30-point game once upon a time. Yeah, Okongwu was kind of surprising too. All these guys, it was like 30 points exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Which makes sense. Okay, Andrew, you're next.
I'll go number 1.
Question number 1. According to Cleaning the Glass, Andrew, the Hawks have the 15th ranked defense this season. Actually, I just checked. It's 14th now. The first time that's happened since the 2016-17 season, where they've been a top half defense.
Wow.
In the 2016-2017 season, who led the Hawks in blocks that season with only 92? Only 92, Andrew.
Oh my gosh.
2016-17 Hawks.
16-17.
16-17.
I think this is Dwight Howard.
Andrew, that is correct. It was Dwight Howard.
Yes.
Only 1.2 blocks per game, but that was enough to be the most blocks on the Hawks. Okay, Lauren, the board is yours.
I'm going to do number 3.
Question number 3. Dyson Daniels had a game with 8 steals this season. Only 6 other Atlanta Hawks have ever had a game with 8+ steals. How many can you name? Now, you do get 1 point per correct answer, and I will tell you, if for some reason you knew this, you could get 6 points. Okay?
Oh,
but I
my
know
gosh.
that neither of you will, so that's why I'm comfortable giving you this opportunity. And as a hint, the most recent game was in 2006. That was the last time an Atlanta Hawk had 8 steals in a game. That's why this question is so hard.
Oh, no.
So can you think of any Hawks in the past who may have had a game with 8+ steals?
Oh, my gosh.
No, I can't.
Can you think of just an old Hawk?
I mean,
Can you
Dominique.
think of an old Hawk?
Dominique
any old
Wilkins. I don't know.
So I think
Doc
Dominique
Rivers.
actually. What do you want your final? What do you want your final guess to be?
Let's go with Doc.
Okay, that is correct. For 1
Okay.
point. Do you have a second guess? Remember, you can get 5 more points here.
Yeah, no, I'm blanking. I'm having performance anxiety right now.
That's okay. This is a really hard question. Borderline impossible. Andrew, you could steal 5 points here, Andrew. If for some reason you knew a bunch of old Hawks.
What about Josh Smith?
No, Andrew.
Seriously?
Good guess. Yeah, I know.
God, he was
Wasn't.
like a steal and block man. He was like great for fantasy back then.
He was.
Man.
Wait
Who
till you
was
hear
it back
these
in
names.
06 then?
It was 5'11" point guard. Does that help? At all?
5'11" point guard. In 2006?
It's Speedy Claxton. Speedy Claxton.
That does not help. Unhelpful.
That does not help. Okay. Other names: Mookie Blaylock. Maybe you would have gotten there.
I would have
Lou
gotten
Hudson.
there.
I don't think anyone was going to be shouting out Lou Hudson.
I was not shouting
John
Lou Hudson.
Drew. I don't think anyone was going to be saying John Drew. And then Eddie Johnson was the other one. So really, Doc was the only like easy, like the gettable, the one gettable point there.
Wow.
Unless you're like a huge Speedy Claxton fan, which I actually was.
Right.
I don't remember him doing that though.
No.
Okay, Andrew, score is 2-1. You have control of the board.
I'll go number 2.
Andrew, there have been 15 two-man lineups for the Hawks that have played at least 500 minutes together. The best two-man lineup is, unsurprisingly, Trae Young and Jalen Johnson with a plus 4.3 net rating. Which two players make up the worst two-man lineup with a minus 5.7 net rating? And you do get 1 point per correct answer, so you don't have to get both of them.
Risacher?
Good guess. Yes, that is worth a point.
Okay.
And who's the other name? Andrew.
Ooh. What about a Kongwu?
Onyeka Okongwu, that is incorrect. Lauren, you have a chance to steal for 1 point. If you can name the other player in the worst two-man lineup, along with Zachary Risacher.
I mean, I would have to. I'd have to guess Clint.
Sometimes these questions are counterintuitive, and the correct answer is actually Dyson Daniels.
That was my guess. That was my. I went against my gut. I shouldn't have
Really?
gone. I should have gone with my gut.
Got to go with your gut.
Gotta
Okay, the
go
good
with my
news
gut.
is you're only down 2, and you have control of the board, so you could tie it up right here.
Okay. 8.
Question number 8, the final question. Okay, which of the following... Oh my gosh, I can't ask this question yet. Oh, this is bad. Okay, I'm going to pivot to another question because I realize I never finished this question. Okay, Trae Young is averaging double-digit assists for the 4th time in his career. There are only 11 players in NBA history who have had at least 4 seasons with double-digit assists, and we're going to name them all. So how this works is Lauren will give me a name, then Andrew will give me a name, and we'll go back and forth till one of you stumbles. So this is players who have had at least 4 seasons with double-digit assists.
Okay. I'm gonna guess Nash. Steve Nash.
That is correct.
It's
Andrew.
gotta be right. Yeah. Chris Paul?
Chris Paul is correct, Andrew.
So that means we have 2 more.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, sorry. You have 9 more.
9 more. Oh, okay. Luca?
That is incorrect, Andrew. To
Okay.
get the points, can you name one more?
John Stockton?
John Stockton. That is correct, Andrew. The other names: Magic,
Magic Johnson?
Magic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Russell Westbrook, Oscar
Again,
Robertson.
I went against my gut. I was gonna say Russ. Overthinking.
James Harden, Rajon
Harden.
Rondo, Darren Williams, Kevin Johnson,
Darren Williams did it.
and Isaiah Thomas. Yeah, Darren Williams. D-Will.
Wow. Wow.
Okay,
Overthinking
Andrew,
Overthinking it.
you have control of the board.
Number 4?
Question number 4. What is Larry Nance Jr.'s career high in points? Now you get to choose who answers first. You can make Lauren answer first, and then you can go higher or lower. Or you can answer first.
Oh my
and then make
gosh.
Lauren go higher or lower. If you make Lauren guess and she gets it exactly correct, she would get a bonus point. So some risk involved there. What would you like to do, Andrew?
Okay. This is funny. We have a Discord for the NBA Daily, and someone was like, Andrew, you answer this question every single time with what number it is. And so I will defer
That is
to
true.
Lauren
You
this
do
time.
that.
So,
Okay.
Lauren.
I'm gonna guess. I feel
Larry
like
Nance
it's
Jr.
like
career high.
I feel like I looked this up recently.
Ooh.
Feels like a Steven Adamsy number to me. Like a guy that's been around a long time, but never really does anything big.
I feel like it's like 26 or something like that.
Okay. So Lauren has set the bar at 26 points. Andrew, would you like to go higher or lower?
That's a great number. I was going to say 27. But I think I'll go lower.
Correct answer is Larry Nance Jr., career high in points, 23, which means Andrew gets the points.
Yes.
And that was actually a game against Atlanta in 2020.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Okay, Lauren.
Is it
2 questions
Is
left.
it interesting at all?
No, because I'm losing.
Number 5 or number 7?
Number 5.
Okay. Which of the following is not a Basketball Reference official nickname for a current Atlanta Hawk? Okay, so I'm going to read you 5 nicknames. 4 of them appear on Basketball Reference. 1 does not.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Those nicknames are Swiss Bank, The Gardener, Baby Durant, Stat Stuffer, and The Closer. Once again, that is Swiss Bank, The Gardener, Baby Durant, Stat Stuffer, or The Closer. Which one of those is not a real Basketball Reference nickname?
I'm going to go with Stat Stuffer.
Stat Stuffer is the nickname for Terrence Mann.
Stop.
What a nickname.
So who's the gardener?
Boo.
Or who was
Well, Andrew has to guess.
Oh.
Andrew, so the remaining
List
names,
them.
Swiss Bank,
Yeah.
The Gardener, Baby Durant, and The Closer.
Who's Baby Durant on the? I mean, I don't know. I'll go The Closer, but I don't know.
The Closer is a nickname for George Niang.
I knew that.
Baby Durant is Karis LeVert.
I knew there was a Baby Durant. So you made up the
Karis
gardener.
LeVert, Baby
I made
Durant.
up the Gardener, and this is the question that I had to pivot earlier because I hadn't come up with a fake nickname yet, and the Gardener was the first one that popped in my
The
head.
Gardener. It seems like the other ones are so generic.
It's like Stat Stuffer.
I don't even know.
Closer.
Yeah. Stat Stuffer is like the worst nickname I've
That's
ever
why I was
seen
like,
on
it
Basketball
could
Reference.
not be. I was like, it could not be that.
How did that make it to Basketball Reference? How did that
Yeah.
make it there? Like, who's calling him that?
That's
On the
what I
other
was-
hand, why would you call someone the Gardener? What would be the connection to basketball there? I don't
You
know.
just really dig him. I don't know.
That could be it. Okay, Andrew, final question. You don't need that. Question number 7. Trae Young leads the league in assists, while Dyson Daniels leads the league in steals. The last time 2 teammates led the league in assists and steals like that was the 2018-19 season when Russ and PG did it in OKC. Who was the last player to lead the league in assists and steals by himself? Didn't even need a teammate.
Wow. I'll go with Rondo.
Andrew, that is a good guess, but it's wrong. Okay, Lauren, you can't win the game,
No.
but you could end on a very high note if you can get this question correct. Last player to lead the league in assists and steals all by himself.
I feel Chris Paul?
Lauren? That is correct.
Really?
Wow.
In
That's
the
that's great.
09 season, Chris Paul led the league in
Wow.
assists and steals.
P3.
Great
Wow.
poll. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to win. Andrew
Nope.
wins this week, which means the next time you come back will be the rubber match. Andrew versus Lauren. Best of 3.
Best
All
of
right.
3. Go read
Best of
Lauren at
3.
the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Andrew, that was Atlanta Hawks week. What a week it was. One game. So
what a week.
We're spinning the wheel again, as we do every week on Wheel of Fandom, to see what team we're going to become a fan of next week. And let's see, there's 19 teams remaining. And there's some good ones. There's some teams that are doing well, pushing for playoff seeding, all that kind of stuff. There's also a lot of teams at the bottom. We got
some teams that we really don't want. No disrespect, but please,
no disrespect at all. But we're going to spin that wheel and see who we get. And next week's Wheel of Fandom team will be...
No way.
Right before we started recording, Andrew was like, I just hope we get a good team. I said, I guarantee we were going to get Phoenix.
You said it. I wish we were recording because you said we're probably going to get Phoenix. And then we just lamented about how horrible that team is.
God, they're so bad.
They're really bad. I guess it's good to kind of whittle away these teams before the playoffs. I guess.
There's plenty to talk about with this team because what do you do?
There's a lot to talk about with what they're going to do this offseason with all the Durant stuff that happened. There's plenty to talk about. Also about the cheap hot dogs, And
so they also, by the way, this stretch that they have coming up, this is like if they don't do something here, I mean, it's probably already over, but if they don't do something here, it's really over. Because their next 5 games, Chicago, Toronto, at Memphis, New Orleans. Like, you got to go 4-1.
Yeah.
You have to. Will they?
Won't, but they won't. But they have to.
Because after that, it's like all the good West teams just one after another.
Yeah, they're toast. I think they're one of the teams, and maybe they pull it together. Maybe the wheel has the opposite effect this time. Maybe the wheel will spin things around for them. Hey, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show, just like this one from Stussy_X. From Italy. Hi, I'm one of the biggest fans of your show here in Italy. I just want to say thanks to the whole team behind this podcast, especially the Slam and Jam crew. I love the trivia. Only bad thing I can say about the show is that you almost never talk about Simone Fontecchio. So, you know what? Shout out Simone Fontecchio. I think that I made that a category, the Simone Fontecchio Award, not that long ago. So
that's something.
We kind of talked about it in a negative way. So hopefully we get some Simone Fontecchio stuff for the rest of the season, and we'll try to shout him out. Next one comes from Mindogui Couscous. I'm sure that's exactly how you say it. Slam and Jam is a great show. I look forward to every week. Alex and Andrew have great rapport, and it's an informative and funny show that keeps up with the news around the league each week. 5 stars. Thank you so much for that review. Next one comes from Brian Becker. Says, Slam and Raspberry Jam. I love seeing the Thunder bias come through on occasion on Saturday. Winky face. Speaking of, does Aaron Wiggins have any shot at 6th Man of the Year if he keeps this up after the break? He does not have a shot, but we did talk about him on the show. So shout out to Aaron Wiggins, who is one of my favorite dudes on the Thunder for sure. From TOWCA, 5 stars. You guys should do a thing where, I know this is like snubs, where you rate the top non-all-star players. Okay. That's an interesting idea. And then this last one comes from Gunny McBootboot from Australia. 5 stars. Thank you, Lord. As of now, we have another great NBA podcast to indulge in. My favorite part of the week is Slam and Jam. I love to try to compete in the trivia and don't think I'm anywhere near a sicko level as you guys, but it's a great pod. All the same, keep it up. I'm from Australia's capital, so an extra sentimental star. Can you name an NBA player from my city, from the capital of Australia? Do you even know the capital of Australia? Is it Sydney?
Let's see. There's only so many Australian players. We could probably rattle them all off.
I would guess Patty Mills. That would be my guess.
And I will guess Jock Landale.
Ooh, good one. Okay.
Now, how do we find out who wins?
How do we find? Should we Google this? Capital of Australia.
He was born in East Malvern.
Okay, Canberra is the capital. So is what it says here. Canberra.
So I lost.
NBA player from Canberra. Oh, it says Patty Mills is from Canberra.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's what it says. Basketball player
feels
born.
like a planted question to make you look smart.
Pure guess. He's the first guy I think of. Him and Josh Giddey are the first ones that I think of for sure. Go leave us a 5-star review and even a trivia question for us, and we'll read it on the show. Thank you so much for leaving those reviews. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the basketball, and we will talk to you guys again next week.